Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Rob, and I'm really just going to be moderating today. With me, I have Kurt, and I'm going to pass over control to him in just a second. I just have two quick housekeeping items before we get started. One is I just want you to know that we're recording this, and you'll receive an email probably tomorrow with the recording. If you want to be able to review it or send it to colleagues or stuff like that. And also, throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, just drop them into the question area of the GoToWebinar console, and we'll make sure to leave enough time at the end to get to all your questions. So with that, we're just going to jump right into it, and I am going to transfer control over to Kurt.
Great, thank you, Rob. Let me pull up my screen here. Here we go. It looks like it's coming through. And Rob, could you just confirm that my screen is showing now?
Got it.
Very good. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today. The topic of today's webinar, we're going to talk about how Kinvey can help make your SharePoint instances cloud first and mobile first. So if those of you who are familiar with Kinvey at all, and some of the past things that we've been working on, we have these set of what we call rapid connectors that allow you to very quickly and without writing any code extend backend data sources into your mobile apps. And so today we'll be focusing on the SharePoint connector. So just a little bit of background information. Kinvey as a platform solves this problem that mobile developers have, where there's a big gap between front-end mobile development, so building the client mobile apps on your devices and with various different SDKs, and with connecting to these enterprise systems, right? So whereas when you're building mobile apps, you want to be very agile, you want to do things in a standardized way. Enterprise systems don't always support that. They're not always very friendly, right? They have different types of APIs. They use different standards. Maybe some have SOAP web services, maybe some have REST web services, maybe some don't have web services at all. They may not be set up to scale in the way your mobile app needs. And so there's this gap that causes people a lot of challenges when they're looking into and doing mobile development. And Kinvey really solves that problem by standardizing things across the board, right? And our rapid connectors, such as our SharePoint one, are a key component of that. So when you think about SharePoint specifically, there's some challenges that people have with SharePoint. I've been in mobile development since around 2007 or so, and I'd say SharePoint is one of the top systems that companies want to put into their mobile apps, but they struggle to do it. There's important data in there. Most companies that have a SharePoint instance, people use it fairly heavily, but they really can't access it very well on their mobile device, right? The web client that SharePoint has doesn't work very well on mobile. If it's an on-premise instance of SharePoint, you may not be even able to access that on mobile. And so out of the box, it's really not a very friendly experience. And when you think about developing a mobile app off of SharePoint, well, you have to think about, all right, how am I going to connect to that? How am I going to interact with these SharePoint APIs that really aren't set up for a mobile use case? How am I going to administer those, and who has access to those? And so there's a lot of challenges when it comes to integrating with SharePoint. And Kinvey, with our new Rapid Connector, we solve all these challenges, right? Our Rapid Connector that we're going to see a demo of today will translate everything that's coming from SharePoint into standard REST and JSON-based endpoints that Kinvey's client-side SDKs, whether you're on iOS, whether you're doing Android development, whether it's native or using a hybrid approach like an Angular or Ionic or another JavaScript framework or Xamarin or Titanium, we have SDKs for all of those. So you can build with whatever you want to on the client side. And all of these SDKs, as well as our REST API, allow you to interact with the SharePoint data in a very standardized way. Now our Rapid Connector is going to be handling that authentication for you against SharePoint. It's going to just be able to discover the endpoints that SharePoint is making available. So for example, SharePoint has this concept of lists, so that's what we'll be looking at today, right? So you can have a large number of lists in SharePoint, and our connector is going to auto-discover those for you. It's going to allow you to map those, select the fields that you need, right? Another big challenge in mobile development is sometimes when you're calling an API, it's returning a heck of a lot more data than you need for your app. And that can cause performance issues. It can be very slow. And so you really only need a couple of those fields. In many cases, our connector lets you do that very easily without writing any code and transform that response. We also are going to see our cloud caching feature today, right? SharePoint isn't necessarily going to scale for your mobile needs. Some responses might be too slow, and with Kinvey, you have the option of caching those requests, and again, without writing any code, making your app more performant and delivering those sub-second response times that your end users want and that are going to drive adoption to your mobile app. So in our demo today, what we're going to do is I have an app, and this app is built in Angular, right? It could be built in anything. I chose Angular today using our Angular SDK. And with Kinvey, like I mentioned, the back-end system is abstracted, right? The front-end developer is not going to need to know that this data is coming from SharePoint or from anywhere else. All they know is that it's a standardized set of data. It's coming in the format that they expect, and they're going to be able to build their app very easily. Now, another scenario that I've run across a lot in my career building mobile apps is that oftentimes the development of your app is delayed because the front-end developers are waiting for something on the back end to be ready, right? Either that or they're waiting for someone to spin up a dummy web service for them so that they can access data and start getting going. Well, Kinvey solves that problem as well. So in our example today, we're gonna use Kinvey actually as a data store for some sample data and instantly spin up an endpoint that we can use to start building our front-end UI for the SharePoint app. And then once our SharePoint list is ready, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our rapid connector against SharePoint, and we're going to flip the switch, as we say. So without changing anything on the client side, we're going to instantly be able to say, okay, our SharePoint stuff is ready. Let's start pulling from that instead of from the Kinvey data store with our sample data, and the client-side developer is not going to have to change a single line of code in the app. So with that, let's move on to the demo here, and then as Rob mentioned at the end, we'll have some time to answer any questions that you guys have. So here you can see on my screen now the Kinvey management console. Right, this is where I'm able to control and manage everything about my apps through Kinvey. And on the right here, I have my Angular app, as you can see, running right here. This is an app that's an internal application. We have some product information in here. We have some account information that's actually coming from our Salesforce instance. But let's say as a mobile developer, I've been asked to now incorporate some information from SharePoint. So our HR team has asked IT to put together some HR checklists within a SharePoint instance, and they want to pull that into our company app here. So as a front-end developer, I want to get started here right away, and I've been told by our SharePoint team that list isn't quite ready yet. It might be done in a day or two. So I want to get started with my development. So what I'm going to do here is, I created this empty screen here, this HR tasks screen within my app, but it's hard for me to work on this because I don't have any sample data right now. So I want to quickly spin up a sample endpoint within Kinvey that I can use to start building my UI here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to the Kinvey management console, and I'm going to go to the data section. This is where you manage your data collections within Kinvey, and I'm going to create a new collection to back this screen that I'm building. We'll call this to do, and as I mentioned, for now I'm going to use the Kinvey data store for this, and we'll create that collection. You can also see all of the connectors that I have set up and available to me as part of my service catalog, which is another feature of Kinvey. Actually, any connections you make to back-end systems, you can reuse across apps and have that repeatability that's sometimes lacking in mobile development. But anyways, here I created a to-do collection that we're going to interact with. And the first thing that I want to do is just add in some sample data. Kinvey has this really neat import-export feature, right? You can quickly import a JSON or a CSV file to get some sample data in here. So I'm just going to go and choose this file from my desktop here, and we'll import that. And instantly, I have a endpoint set up that I can interact with from my device. Now I've already written the client-side code. It's actually just a couple lines of code using our SDK to call data from this collection. And I'm just going to refresh here. And now my sample data is coming in. So as the front-end developer, I can work on my UI here. I can improve this a bit, which clearly could use some work, maybe some input from a graphic designer here. But I'm able to get going on that as the front-end developer. So no waiting, and we're already well on our way towards building our app here. Now let's say it's a couple of days later, and I hear from our SharePoint team that they actually have this list ready to go, and I can actually go and take a look at it here. Here's our SharePoint instance. Here's this HR to-do list that our team created. And what I'm going to do now is use our Rapid connector to pull from our actual SharePoint instance. So let's go back to the Kinvey management console here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a data link to this SharePoint instance. So a new data link, you can see all the different options for out-of-the-box data links that Kinvey has. We also have the option to write a custom data link using our SDK if you have a system that we don't have a Rapid connector for. But in this case, we do have a Rapid connector for SharePoint. And I'm going to call this Kurt SharePoint, let's say. We don't need to give it a description. As you can see, we support both SharePoint 2013, which would be the on-premise version of SharePoint. We also support SharePoint Online. In today's example, obviously, as you just saw when I was at SharePoint, it's the SharePoint Online version. Let me put in the host here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this. There we go. We don't need to specify a particular site. You can see I have two authentication options as well. We have Kinvey's Mobile Identity Connect, which actually would allow you to pass through user credentials if you use them to log into the app, or you can use a service account as well, and that's what we'll do in this case. I don't think this is correct. That's pre-populated, so let me copy and paste those as well. There's our username for our service account, and there's our password, and I'll create that data link. And I guess it does want a description here, so we'll call this Kurt's SharePoint connector. Let's try that one more time. All right, so now we have Kurt SharePoint created here, and one of the other neat things about the Rapid connectors that Kinvey has is that they can actually auto-discover things for you, right? So instead of having to go and get a definition of the SharePoint APIs from our SharePoint team, I can actually click Discover here, and it's going to go out and using my credentials that I entered, it's going to go and pull SharePoint and expose all the lists that we have. You can see the number of options here. Got a bunch of lists in our SharePoint instance. In this case, I want the HR to-do list. So let's take a look at that. And we want to map this to my to-do collection. And I can select what operations I want to support here, right? So if you want to limit people to not be able to delete records, for example, you could do that. I'm just going to select all of them. And the other thing you see here is we automatically discovered all of the fields that are here in SharePoint. And I don't need all of these in my mobile app, right? If I return all of these in a response down to my device, it's just going to slow things down. It's not going to be good for performance. So I can really quickly say, all right, what do I need? Well, I want title. I think we're using action in the app. We're using due date. I think we're using class in there somewhere, as well as the completed flag. The ID we're using, but I actually called the ID field something else in my collection. It's actually _ID, and so I'm going to be able to transform that here without writing any code. So So this is what my client app expects. I don't want to have to rewrite anything on my client. I can do that transformation here, and I don't think we need any of these other fields. Let me just get rid of them all. You see how many there are, right? If I was going to not transform this, it would be a major performance hit to my app. We'll go and save that as a service object, and we'll just go down here and save our data link. And now the last step that I need to do is go back to my data collection here, and let's go down to the to-do collection. Do I actually have two of these? That's not good. Let's see. This is what happens when when I don't delete the old one that I was using for testing before the webinar. Well, it looks like we're pulling from the right one here, and this one has my data in it, so I hope this is the right one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the data source from the Kinvey data store to my Kurt Salesforce, not Kurt Salesforce, that's the wrong one, Kurt SharePoint that we just created. And we'll confirm that change. And now we haven't changed anything on the client side, right? All we did was set up our data link and change our data source for this collection. And assuming that is in fact the right collection, if I refresh now on my app, you can see now it's pulling in our actual data from our SharePoint list, right? So that's great. We didn't have to make any changes. This was a mobile app that we had already written and was against some other system in production, and then our IT team decided to change from one system to another on the back end. I didn't have to rewrite any code. I didn't have to redeploy anything, and I've also been able to mobilize SharePoint from scratch within 10 minutes here. So super easy. Now the last thing that I want to show you is that caching functionality that we have built in here, right? And honestly, this response was pretty quick, and in fact, on my app here, it's refreshing in the background, nothing changes. You can't really even see how long it takes. So let's go take a look at the API console here in Kinvey. This is a great place for testing as you're doing development within Kinvey. And I'm going to go and send a request to my to-do collection. And you can see every time I do this, it's taking, I don't know, probably between 1 and 2 seconds to respond. So not too slow, but it could be better. And it's long enough that we can illustrate the benefits of server-side caching. So let's go back to our collection here and let's turn that on. Go down to do one more time. And let's go into the settings here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say use the cache for this collection. And you can set the life of the cache as well. 10 seconds seems a little low. I think things don't change that much on our HR to-do list. Let's set it to be an hour. Save that. And again, I didn't have to write any code. I didn't have to set up any infrastructure to cache anything or hold this in memory. This is all hosted and managed by Kinvey for you. And I now have server-side caching set up in my app. If I go back to the API console here, now the first time it's going to, nothing's cached right now because it was off. So the first time I click send request, it's still going to take that 1 to 2 seconds. So there we go, and there's my response. But now, because I turned that caching on subsequent requests, it's going to be almost instantaneous. We're talking about milliseconds here. So let me click it again. You see my response is already back again. This is now cache data. I now have very millisecond response time to my users, and this is not just in our SharePoint connector. This actually works in all of Kinvey's rapid connectors. It's a new feature that we're very excited about. We've always supported caching, but you had to write a little bit of code to do it. Now you don't, and you get all this out of the box with Kinvey. So very powerful stuff. It's really making our customers' lives easier and accelerating their mobile development, as well as making their apps more successful by delivering a better user experience. So that's it for the demonstration today. It looks like we have a few questions coming in. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob just to moderate those and ask me them, and hopefully there's things I can answer.
Thanks, Kurt. That was awesome. And yeah, we have a bunch of time, so please keep on sending these questions in. The first question that we had in was, is all this stuff generally available today? And how would somebody go about having the functionality enabled for their account?
Yeah, good question. So this is available as part of our early adopter program today, and if you're interested in getting it enabled in your Kinvey environment or trying it out, just shoot an email over to sales@kinvey.com, and we can get that conversation going for you. And if you're already a customer, we can get that turned on in your environment.
Awesome. Okay, and then I'm going to combine two of these questions because I think my guess is that you'll have a similar answer for both. One is can you, and I actually think you touched on this in the demo a little bit anyway, but I'll ask it again. Can I use the same connector for multiple apps? And then as a follow-on, can I set up the connector to sync different SharePoint lists to different apps?
Yeah, good question. So that actually has to do with the service catalog that I think I mentioned briefly there. So if you remember when I can pull it up again. Right, so these are all the data links that I have access to, and they're not all being used in this app. When you use Kinvey, with this concept of the service catalog that allows you to reuse the connectors that you've built, right? So if I have another app or someone in another department at the company is building an app, and they also need access to this to-do list that I just configured, we can make this available to them as part of their service catalog, and they're not going to have to redo any work at all. And the other question there is, can you use it to use different lists in different apps? And the answer is absolutely, right? So if they need the to-do list and something else, we can add that to the connector. It'll be in the catalog. I could use it in that other app, and I still wouldn't use it in this app, or vice versa. And you can continually build up that catalog as you go, right? So you're not required to use all your lists in every single app. You really just kind of pick and choose as you need them, and you get that reusability and not having to redo any work.
Great. So just had a question come in. Somebody wants to know if and if so, how it works. If the identity connector can work with things like ping to enable single sign-on?
Yeah, yep. So Mobile Identity Connect works with a lot of different, really any identity provider that uses standards, right? So if you, and actually I can pull this up as well just to show everyone the options here. So I go into my users and the auth source. So you can actually either use Kinvey as the identity provider, or you can use really any OAuth 2 provider that uses the OAuth 2 standard, Active Directory. You can use LDAP, any SAML provider as well. So ping is one of those that's supported. This app actually, I was already logged in when we started the demo. This one's pointed to ADFS, but ping is another one that I believe uses either OAuth 2 or SAML. I don't remember exactly, but yes, it is supported.
Cool. And can Kinvey connect to an on-premise SharePoint instance? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah. Yep. So the two versions of SharePoint that we support are SharePoint Online and SharePoint 2013. SharePoint 2013 is typically on-premise, and Kinvey has a couple of different ways that you can connect to that. Our enterprise customers are able to set up a VPN tunnel between Kinvey and their environment. So that's one very popular way of doing it. We also have a kind of outbound service that you can have running in your environment where you can control what Kinvey has access to. So if that's something that's easier for your organization to get set up than a VPN tunnel, or if you're on Kinvey's multi-tenant instance and so you don't have the VPN tunnel as an option, then you can use this little agent, if you will, that you can install within your environment and have that outbound connection in place. So a couple different options depending on what you and your security team prefer.
Great. And then the last question that we have up here for now, but we still do have time, so if anybody has any more, feel free to drop them in. Somebody wants to know about how we handle data security with the data being sent sort of to and from SharePoint and Kinvey, and to and from Kinvey and the device.
Okay. Yeah, that builds a little bit on the last question, right? So between Kinvey and your environment, as we mentioned, it could be the tunnel, it could be via the agent. In both those cases, and really in every case, including if you're connected to SharePoint Online, right? The communication both between Kinvey and SharePoint, as well as between Kinvey and the app, is all TLS encrypted. So we're using the encryption standards. Everything's going over HTTPS and is protected in both between the app and Kinvey, as well as between Kinvey and the SharePoint instance.
Great. Well, it looks like that handles all the questions that we had come in. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Kurt, for that awesome demo. Like I said at the beginning of the webinar, should receive an email from us likely tomorrow with the recording. And thanks again, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.